Cecilia, and I'm here to talk to you about Brazil climate change. For the most part, Brazil climate emission comes from deforestation from the Amazon rainforest. Illegal excessive work in the rainforest primarily contributes to the greenhouse gas emission. According to Climate Tracker, Brazil emitted 130 mt CO2 in 2016. There have been numerous efforts to reduce the amount of emission. For example, according to Climate Tracker, there have been budget cuts of 50% to the Environment Ministry, as well as various other areas where issues and concern are raised about the government's ability in regarding to monitoring the increasing deforestation. They also monitor deforestation in order to obtain accurate evidence of the impacting activity. According to the analysis of the greenhouse gas emission system in 2015, Brazil emitted 1.927 billion tons of CO2, equivalent from up to 1.861 billion tons in 2014. It was also discovered that deforestation contributes 884 million tons of carbon dioxide. A study done by numerous scientists conducting the research of estimating greenhouse gas emission from future Amazonian hydroelectric reservoir concluded that tropical hydroelectric dams actually contribute a small part to the total emission for Brazil. They emit carbon dioxide, but not enough to contribute a significant amount to the total emission. It separates cold water from the bottom and brings warmer water up to the surface. The oxygen within the bottom layer of the cold water is exhausted and then decomposed from methane instead of CO2. The running water at a high speed in a large river prevents the formation of stratification. When bays are flooded, the stratification can occur, which then has the potential to lead to methane emission. An interesting fact presented by the IOP Publishing in reference to the experiment done on the climate emission in Brazil says that the fossil fuels are not an alternative because of the potential that Brazil has for solar wind energy. They say how dam building is ultimately shifting to the tropical areas full of humidity, thus leading to the possibility of emission being higher than other climate zones. In order to prevent the potential for more emission of the greenhouse gases, they state how the impact of these emissions needs to be given the proper weight in energy policy decisions. This is in order to prevent further impactful emissions. Crops such as bananas, mangoes, grapes, coffee, rice, maize, and soy will greatly be impacted, especially impacted by the reducing income that Brazil has with these crops. Brazil is unable to send fruits and crops to other countries if there is a health issue with the fruit. Sadly, farmers fail to acknowledge this and proceed to plant more crops without further reduction of the CO2 emissions. Over time, the decrease in crop production will demonstrate a steady drop in the market and on the land. There will also be increasing changing weather patterns. Mudslides will be the main issue regarding the land in town. According to the Brazilian Panel on Climate Change, the Brazilian Agriculture Research Corporation says that the knowledge in preventing deforestation and greenhouse gas emission is present yet needs to take action. They say how farmers need a better guidance on how to protect the crops and healthily maintain them. They state we must increase the productivity in the Midwest, Southeast, and South to avoid destruction of the Amazon rainforest. The reorganization of Brazil's rural space is urgent. Okay, stop.
In the fall of 2016, Brazil signed on to the Paris Agreement. At the time, this was a huge deal for the corporation because they needed more countries with larger emission to enforce the agreement. David Waskow, director of the International Climate Initiative at the World Resources Institute, states, "This should spur other countries to join and help galvanize global action." According to the Washington Post, Brazil contributes 2.48% of global emissions. This makes Brazil the 7th highest emitter. Most of the emission Brazil produces is from deforestation, which is different from other countries which produce their emission with burning fossil fuels. By signing this agreement, they committed to cut effect gas emissions in 37% by 2025.
Okay.
Brazil has been taking big steps to mitigate and adapt to climate change around the country. On the National Geographic website, B.C. Howard states, quote, "Since 2004, farmers and ranchers in Brazil have saved over 33,000 square miles, or 86,000 square kilometers, of rainforest from clear cutting. the rough equivalent of 14.3 million soccer fields. A team of scientists and economists from the US and South America report in Science. This is a great achievement to not only preserving the magnificent rainforests of Brazil, but also decreasing the country's carbon footprint. National Geographic also states that the country has reduced deforestation by 70% and kept 3.2 billion tons of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And that makes Brazil the biggest reduction in greenhouse gas emissions of any country in the world. The cut is more than 3 times bigger than the effect of taking all the cars in the US off of the road for a full year. Brazil has enforced strict laws against the deforestation and has also come upon a regulatory approach known as the critical counties, which essentially prohibits all government loans to any agricultural producers if there's a great amount of deforestation in that specific country. This regulation is greatly opposed, but from the National Geographic website, it increases internal pressure to make everybody fall in line. Brazil has big plans to reduce its carbon footprint in the future. As Madzi said earlier, and according to TheGuardian.com, the world's 7th biggest greenhouse gas polluter said it would cut its emissions by 37% by 2025 from 2005 levels, by reducing deforestation and boosting the share of renewable sources in its energy mix. It also indicated an intended reduction of 43% by 2030. With Brazil's projections, they would reduce their emissions from 1.6 billion tons a year to 1.5 billion tons a year by 2025, yet they would ideally like to have it reduced to 1 gigaton by 2030. Stopping deforestation isn't Brazil's only goal to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions. TheGuardian.com also states, by 2030, Brazil, which has large dams, aims to get 66% of its electricity from hydropower and 23% from other renewable sources, including wind, solar, and biomass.
In our own personal and not at all professional opinion, Brazil is not doing enough for climate change. The government ended up issuing budget cuts of up to 50% on efforts on stopping deforestation. And in just 2016, Brazil contributed about 130 MT CO2s into the atmosphere. Although the country has made an effort as one of the only developing countries to make goals for limiting their emission, unfortunately, Brazil does not meet them. In a quote from Climate Action Tracker, if the CAT were to rate Brazil's projected emission levels under current policies, they would also be rated insufficient.